Hello and welcome to our EdPolicyWorks speaker series today. I am Erica Sachs-Langerhans, and they're your doctoral student at education policy here, as most of you know. This talk is part of the EPW series sponsored by the Bankard Fund for Political Economy. Each semester, EPW hosts a number of talks from external and sometimes internal speakers on a host of education policy and research-related topics. These talks are free and open to the public. This is our last speaker of the semester. For more information on EdPolicyWorks or the fall speaker series, please visit our website. Today, we are delighted to welcome Dr. Gema Zamarro. Dr. Zamarro is a professor of education reform and economics at the University of Arkansas and 21st century endowed chair in teacher quality at the Department of Education Reform. Dr. Zamarro's research is motivated by policy relevant questions and the use of rigorous methods to help inform education and labor policy. Her current research focuses on the study of teacher labor markets, teacher recruitment and retention, teacher quality and teacher pensions, measurement and development of socio-emotional skills, determinants of gender gaps in STEM, and gender and education impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Zamarro's work has been featured numerous times in the media, and she has helped inform policy at both state and national levels. For the past 2 years, she has been ranked by Education Week among the 200 most influential education scholars in the US. She received her bachelor's degree in economics from Carlos University in Madrid, Spain, and her master's and doctorate from CEMFI, a leading institution in research and graduate education and economics in Europe, founded by the Bank of Spain. Dr. Zamarro will be talking for approximately 1 hour and will leave 15 minutes for discussion and questions. Please note that any additional or personalized questions after 1:15 can be addressed via email, as other meetings will begin at that time. As a reminder, this talk will be recorded and will be available on the EPW website to be viewed at a later time. Thank you for attending the EdPolicyWorks speaker series today. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Zamarro.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and share this work, which is timely. So we are trying to move fast, but at the same time, it's still very disciplinary, so I can get all your feedback. So I'm going to talk today about changes that are happening in Arkansas in teacher salaries as a result of the Arkansas Learns Act, and we will be looking also at some results on teacher turnover. From that, this is joint work with my student on the market, though he's deciding some offers, so soon to not be in the market, I hope. Andrew Camp, he's great. Josh McGee, another student of mine, Taylor Wilson, and Miranda Vernon from my department. I will explain why I needed so many people to do this work with me, but it took a village. So yes, stay with me. So let me start saying that attracting and retaining high quality teachers is a matter of significant policy concern. If we look at what's going on in teaching right now, we have documented decline in prestige in the profession, along with declines in enrollment in teacher preparation programs. And this is something that to some extent is also happening in Arkansas. So here I have a graph where I represent the number of new enrollees each year, and we see from 2011 to 2022, we have a decline on enrollees, especially in traditional programs. In Arkansas, we see that maybe the total decline is not as large because we have an increasing share of teachers that are being trained through alternative programs. And this is an issue that is especially problematic in a state like Arkansas. As I will show you in a moment, Arkansas is a state with documented areas of teacher shortages, so there is a big need of teachers, especially in certain areas of the state. At the same time, we see that teacher salaries have stagnated over the past several decades. And when we look at research and we compare teacher salaries with other college graduates, it's kind of mixed, but in general, we see that either they are on par or they are below what other college graduates make. It depends on what you do in compensation. But let's say we are in need of a lot of teachers. It's a big labor market. And we are in a situation when less and less parents want their kids to become teachers, lower enrollment, and we are not, they are not being paid enough to do that. Sorry, let's try to put it here. So in this context, we have the LEARNS Act that happened a year ago. Is one of the most comprehensive statewide changes in teacher compensation policy that we have seen in the past 30 years. And we see that this is a movement not only in Arkansas, but across the state, across the US. We have to my knowledge, lawmakers in at least 23 states have proposed bills that increase minimum teacher salaries and offer other bonuses to improve teacher recruitment and retention, and at least 6 of those bills, including the Arkansas LEARNS Act, have been signed into law. So I think this type of reform is something that we are going to see happening more and more along the year. So I hope we can learn something from the Arkansas experience. So what did the LEARNS Act do in terms of teacher salaries? It increased the state's minimum salary from $36,000 to $50,000. So that's a big change. And also guarantee all teachers needed to have a minimum raise of $2,000 across the state. The new law also gives districts some more flexibility to decide how they wanted to compensate teachers. Districts in Arkansas already had a lot of flexibility, but the law eliminated minimum salary schedules by the states, and the districts in principle could decide if they want to pay in the typical structure of paying by level of education and experience, or whether they wanted to go a different route. So we want to see with this introduction, this happened in March 2023, we want to see what's happening, how our districts adapting, and how our teachers reacting to these changes. So in this presentation today, in this what I have done so far, I want to answer 3 research questions. The first one is, how have Arkansas school districts adjusted their compensation policies in response to the LEARNS Act? Second one is how the relationship between teacher salaries and district characteristics might have changed as a result of the LEARNS Act. And then we want to look at teachers and see how the new salary schedules have, if they have impacted teacher retention and mobility patterns this first year of implementation. So the rest of the presentation, I want to go through a brief literature review, just highlight some papers that I think are especially relevant for what I'm doing, informing what I'm doing. I want to talk about Arkansas. I don't get to talk about Arkansas a lot, so I want to tell you kind of context of where we are and where the legislation came. So the legislation came in the years of going out from the COVID-19 pandemic. So I want to give you also some results or like some descriptives of what the pandemic effects were on teacher retention and recruitment, something that we have been studying also, just to give you the context, and then how the legislation came to pass, show you the data we collected for this, and our main resource for the 3 research questions, and our specific empirical approach when I try to study the impact of teacher retention. The rest of the work is more descriptive. So let's start just with some literature. I think if you read the literature, we think, I get the impression like increasing teacher salaries could be useful to help support the supply of teachers, but retaining and attracting high quality teachers in the profession. In the early work, what we see is that teacher salaries, along with other working conditions, they both seem to be predictors of teacher turnover decisions. So it's not the only thing. Working conditions are also important, especially things as student body characteristics, but maybe just also like the challenges that those bring. Discipline is an important problem. Leadership is a key component, like who is your principal is very important. But I think along all this work, teacher salaries also are a component that could help. So to keeping that in mind, there are 2 papers that I want to highlight that I think are especially related or they have helped inform my work. The first paper is by Hendricks, 2014. He uses administrative data from Texas to study the relationship between teacher pay and turnover, looking at the variation in base salaries over time across districts and across different years of experience of teachers. And he finds a significant effects of the increases in teacher base pay on reducing turnover out of the district. The effects were larger for less experienced teachers, so the elasticity to salary was larger for less experienced teachers. It decreased with experience, and it disappears when teachers are about 19 years of experience. His theory in that paper that he says is that maybe by then teachers have already found their ideal working condition environment, and then teacher salaries are not, they don't want to move from their ideal school. I think it's interesting because then he does a series of simulation exercises, and he finds that actually given these different elasticities by years of experience of the teacher, a flat schedule might be beneficial for increasing retention and student outcomes, because young teachers will react more, whereas the older teachers don't react. So that was interesting to see, because we will see that one thing that has happened in Arkansas is that a lot of districts have moved to flat schedules.
What is a flat
So
schedule?
you pay the same level of salary independently of years of experience.
Okay, so there might still be an education bonus,
I think,
but
yeah, but not experience. Yeah.
But-
Question. Now, this assumes that if there are no effects on more experienced teachers in terms of motivation and effort because of not being paid the same as the junior teachers. But I thought that was an interesting result because it's something that I will show you is happening a lot now in Arkansas. The second paper that motivated how I started thinking about doing this analysis just came out by Sun and co-authors. They look at the legislative funding changes in Washington state to study the effect of the increases in base teacher salaries. These increases were mostly for more senior teachers, and they look at retention and hiring. And they do find immediate results. The results show a significant reduction on average teacher turnover rates for mid-career and late career teachers, who are the ones who have experienced more of these races. In the first year of implementation, they didn't find, however, any significant effects on teacher hiring, like more teachers coming in the first 2 years of implementation. So overall, I think this paper suggests that we could see some positive effects on teacher retention of the increases on teacher minimum salary that we have experienced in Arkansas. So that's my hypothesis. On the other hand, in Arkansas, school districts were given flexibility to decide how they want to pay their teachers. So if we look at that literature, we see that maybe breaking free of the traditional salary schedules that compensate years of education and experience, and moving more for maybe pay for performance, flexible schedules, maybe it will be good for schools because they can be more responsive to their specific staffing needs. And the work we have there from Barbara Biasi showed that when schools in Wisconsin were given the autonomy to redesign their teacher compensation, those who transition from the traditional seniority-based salary schedules to pay for performance models were able to attract the higher quality teachers into the district and achieve better student outcomes. They saw in terms of turnover, there was a lot of churn happening, like teachers moving from one type of district to other, and also they saw an increase overall turnover out of public education. But overall, it seems that it changed the composition of the teacher labor force there, and it had positive student outcomes. So there is also a meta-analysis on this literature, and I mean, it depends a lot on your design, but I think overall we find that teacher pay incentives could help attract new teachers and could help retain high quality teachers, although it depends a lot on the design of your specific merit pay or pay for performance program. Okay, so with that context of what we knew before, I want to talk about Arkansas. So my first map. So Arkansas is a mid-sized state the public school system serves about almost 500,000 students, 490,000, and we have about 31,500 teachers in the schools. As I said, something to keep in mind is that Arkansas is a state with documented areas of teacher shortage. About 8 to 9% of teachers have some type of licensure waiver. That's more than double the national average that I believe is around 3%. The Arkansas Department of Education conceptualized shortages by looking at the percentage of teachers that are not licensed to teach the subject area they are assigned to. So that's what I have in the map. It's an average of the percentage of teachers in a subject area they are not licensed for. And this could be because they don't have a license and they are on a waiver, or because they have a license but it's for another subject that they are teaching. And they have to be doing that for more than half the day. And this is an average across years since 2021-22 to 23-24. You see that the yellows and the greens there are the higher areas of shortage. So that is all the East Delta region of the state and the South. You have schools there that have more than 30% of their teachers that are not licensed for what they are teaching. And we also see here in this map, I have just licensure exceptions, which is very similar. Independently, we look at just those with an exception is all that is south of the state that have higher shortages. And these are the areas of the state with higher levels of childhood poverty. So those kids that need the most are the ones that are not having teachers that have licensures, or they are having to put someone who is not fully certified. Yes.
Are these mostly rural
Yes.
areas?
Mostly rural areas, remote areas. One of the big issues and something that we have explored too is like what is happening in that part of the state is there are no universities. People leave to go to college to Little Rock or Northwest Arkansas, which is here in the top where I am. They don't come back. So those areas are developing alternative pathways, grow your own programs are being explored there to bring more people from the community. But that's kind of the context. These are small towns. If people make it to college, they leave the area and if we see in the data, they don't come back necessarily.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just a quick related, are those areas like declining in population overall? Okay.
Declining population, lack of opportunities, yeah. Okay, so in this context is when the Arkansas Learns Act came to be. Signed into law in March 2023. It's a bundle of several education reforms. There is a lot going on. A lot of these things are influencing teachers. That include the increase in state minimum teacher pay that I'm studying and that I mentioned for 36,000 to 50,000. The guaranteed teacher minimum raise of 2,000. The flexibility for districts to decide how they want to pay. There are also merit pay bonuses that are going to start at the end of this year based on value added. So that's coming up. They also added 12 weeks of paid maternity leave for teachers. They also did something that are not so positive. They repealed some of the protections that teachers had in their jobs. It's not a big deal because it's just kind of reporting on if you are going to be dismissed. They eliminated some of the reporting requirements, so it's easier to dismiss a teacher now. I don't think that it was very hard before. So, but there are some things that might not be so positive and that teachers also, just to see how this was perceived. There is a lot going on. Other things that are going on that are also more controversial are the introduction of school vouchers for school choice too, and also like literacy requirements for 3rd grade and potential retention if you don't satisfy. So it's a big, big thing that includes many things on it. So in terms of salaries, the LEARNs also represent a substantial increase in funding for rural and high poverty districts because the state is giving all the required funds for the increase of teacher salaries. So we calculate that's about 183 million in new state education funding. And that's about 6.5% increase from the previous year. So it's an influx of resources. We look at where these resources are going, projecting what districts will need for their salary allocations as a percentage of the prior year revenue. And you see the dark blue is the ones that are receiving a higher percentage. Those are mostly more rural, higher poverty districts. So it's kind of interesting for me to see like, you know, that this has been actually a very progressive, in terms of influx of money, very progressive reform where a lot of resources are being allocated to rural and high poverty districts. So just to give you context of how this happened, Arkansas is a right to work state. So teacher salary schedules are not collectively bargained. So how this happened is that teacher salaries are primarily determined by the district superintendent and locally elected school board that has to approve it. Next year's salary schedules are not usually approved until now. Now is when we see they are starting to talk about it in a school board, so something between March and May. When this came up, the Arkansas Learns came up, there were efforts to repeal it since March until August. At the same time, so this is an example, like the last effort that failed in August 7. So with that, I want to tell you that there was a lot of uncertainty about what is going to happen. What are we doing here? So this is in the context of how the first year went. At the same time, school districts have to come up with new salary schedules that satisfy the new legislation pretty quickly. So what we saw, we will see that in our data, what we did was collect all these salary schedules for all the districts, and many times they will say, this is the salary schedule if Arkansas Learns continues into effect. If not, we go back to last year. So you can see that sense that like the uncertainty for them. So, and the Arkansas Learns also happened in the time of the pandemic. So we had a lot going on, and teachers on my previous work, I saw like how teacher surveys, teachers were really burned out. They had a hard time during the pandemic. There were a lot of concerns about teachers leaving the profession at that time. And then we also follow with administrative data to see, from Arkansas, to see what was happening, were they leaving or not. And it's interesting because other researchers in other states have been doing the same, and we all, independently of the state, we come up with very similar patterns of how the pandemic affects teacher retention. So what we see is that not much of a change the first year, 2020, 2021. If you see here, it looks pretty similar to pre-pandemic years. We see a slight increase on teacher turnover and less retention. So just to, sorry, I should clarify. So here in this graph, I'm looking at 5 possible states for labor outcomes 1 year, starting the next academic year. So you can be a stayer if you stay in your same school year after year. You can be a mover inside your district. You change the schools, but you keep staying in the district. A mover outside your school district. Or you could be a switcher, which means you leave teaching, but you still work for the district in a non-instructional role. Or you exit the teacher labor force for Arkansas. And what we see is that 2021, 2022, we see that the proportion of stayers goes down slightly. We see that we don't see a big change in exits, but what we see, and it's something that we have seen continuously during the pandemic, is an increase on switchers. More teachers are leaving instruction for other roles within the district. In our work, we are looking at to what extent that's due to ESSER funds that districts got to the funding of new positions. So a lot of these are like teacher coaches positions or that type of support. So it's something that we are investigating, and we see in 22, 23, like other similar results have come up. Like Washington State has the same, North Carolina also, where we see that an increase in exits. So we see more switches, but also more exits. Now, the first year in Learns, 2023-24, we see a recovery, a slight recovery in retention, in stayers, but still is below the pre-pandemic levels. we see, still relatively some more exits and still more switches going out. So it seems that maybe there is some recovery there. Could be just the pandemic recovery, could be learns. They are all happening at the same time. So we try to see if we can disentangle some of that or not. But that's kind of in the context. And that's what we are also seeing in other states, that maybe this year, 23, 24, it could be the first year to kind of start recovering from the pandemic. So just, what was going on there. Okay, so the data. So what did we do? So we went to all web pages of all the school districts, and we called, if they didn't have that, to collect all district salary schedules for 1 year before the pandemic and 1 year after. And I have to thank my student, Andrew Camp, because when the Learns passed in March, he said, let's collect the district salary. And I said, sure. And here we are. So that's why we need a village. A lot of these are, all of these are PDFs. Some are very bad PDFs. So we are collecting this. We try to read it in R and be fancy, like extract the numbers, and it works 50% of the time. So for the other 50%, we just go and put the data in, and then we check each other's work, and that's why I needed so many people. So we have complete data for both years for almost all public school districts. We are missing 4, but yay us. And we have 6 out of 12 for charter schools that were present in the 2 years. And some charter schools don't need to pay, they didn't need to pay according to the state. But we have a good representation of almost all public school districts. So in my work, I'm going to focus, I will show you the salary changes for all of them, but for turnover, I focus on public school teachers where I have the school districts, the salaries. So then we merge this data with other characteristics of districts that come from the Arkansas Department of Education or the National Center for Education Statistics Common Core of Data to have the context. And then we are really fortunate to have this partnership with the Arkansas Department of Education, and through that we've had access to teachers' administrative data, so we can follow them in their career, in their path, since teacher education programs all the way to the labor force, and if they leave, we can see where they are. So I can connect this and see the actual changes for teachers' labor decisions. This is through the Office of Education Policy, which is part of the department, of my department. So as I say, I will focus my analysis on traditional public school teachers for whom I have the salary schedule information. So first, let's look at how Arkansas school districts adjusted. So here in this graph, I have a histogram focusing on entry-level teacher salaries for those with a bachelor degree. We have on the right 22-23, this is pre-reform. We see a majority of districts were way below the new minimum of 50,000. We have the average salary was about 38,000, and we have 39% of districts paying the previous minimum of 36,000. Now you move here, I guess this is the right, I'm looking the other way, you move to 23, 24, what has happened? Everybody is paying around the new minimum of 50,000. The reform has eliminated the variation across districts in entry pay. And we have that 97% of districts are now paying the new minimum of 50,000. So this is a big change. The change, this continues even with higher levels of experience of a teacher. So if we look at bachelor degree, 15 years of experience, even pre-learns, the average was below 50,000. It was about 46,000, although we saw more districts moving towards the 50,000. And in now, post-learns 23-24, that should say 23-24, we have the average is 51,000, and we still have 65% of districts that pay the new minimum. Okay, yeah.
So you said before that the state essentially paid for all of this.
Yes.
How did they figure out how to do that, and how is it applied? Cause I would assume that even first, there were many starting teachers that did not have a salary of $50,000. And so now everyone has to be above that. So I'm just curious, like, how do they actually figure it out? How do they figure out how to allocate the funds correctly?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the reporting, but so the districts get the funds from the state based on the current teachers and in their schedule. So the state only pays for the minimum up to 50,000. If a district wanted to pay 52,000, the 2,000s are on them. So the state is giving the funds just to move everybody to the new. I guess it's a reporting thing between the districts going to the Arkansas Department of Ed and then getting the funds based on their.
So it'd be something like they figure, a district says, here, are all the teachers we have that are under 50K.
Yeah,
Here's how many they
Yeah.
are, here's how many they are, here's
Yeah.
how much you have to pay each of them to get to 50K, and that's how the
Yeah.
state's amount.
yeah.
Were there any districts that increased salaries above what the state minimum was required, either the 50,000 or the 2,000 guaranteed increase?
Yeah, so I will show you what we see on that in a second. I have very cool graphs. Okay. So when we look at like just, I mean, this was a lot of work to go to the PDFs. I would say something I learned. I usually like the quantitative researcher in the team that gets the data, and I don't get to collect these PDFs and look at them. And something that we learned is that we could observe, like do more of a qualitative analysis of how are districts adjusting. And that was really informative. So I like, oh, this is being very useful. So I got to input a lot of data because I was very curious to see if I saw anything different. We only saw 3 cases of how districts adapt. First one, districts whose entire salary schedule before the reform was way below 50K, they just went flat to 50K everybody. That happens for 55% of school districts in the state. Then we have, so I will say, none of those pay more. 50K is what they are giving us. We are going 50K, no differentiation for experience. At least this first year. We have to see what happens second year. Like I said, first year, districts were like, I don't know. So I think what we see is that they did the minimum to satisfy the law requirement.
So if you were a teacher in school district 1 with like 20 or 30 years of experience, you might be making more than 50K. So this just doesn't really affect you, I'm guessing, but if you're.
You were making, the whole schedule was below. They were paying so low
Okay.
that everybody's getting a high. So
Understood.
you might be in one of these districts and still getting a 10,000
I see.
increase.
Yeah.
But I would say there's been a lot of like, you know, you go social media and see like teachers in these districts complaining that my new teacher is now making the same as I'm making. And you're like, yeah, but you are getting a 10,000. So I don't know, like, so it was interesting when I saw the Hendrick paper that said flat schedules because teachers are not happy about that, at least. So it's something we want to explore more, like maybe with surveys, like see. But it's very interesting. So they all, these were all below. So they still got a bonus, like an increase.
So, I feel like I said this, but I'm almost in shock. In 55% of districts,
It's flat.
no teacher prior to this was making more than
More than
$50,000 a
50K.
year.
Yeah, I know, that's where we were. So this is, I mean, this is interesting because it's a huge shift. It has made Arkansas, I mean, the governor likes to say that. Now we are in the top 3 in terms of teacher pay. We were in the bottom. Last bottom or bottom. So it's very interesting. It's bringing conversations also with nearby states like Missouri that is trying to increase now, which there is a lot that we could look at that. Like I hear that now Missouri is worried that teachers are going to come to Arkansas. We lose a lot of teachers, especially in my university, we train a lot of teachers from Texas. We have a lot of students from Texas and we lose a lot of teachers. I wonder if this is helping retain some of those more because now we are more competitive than we were. It's a big change. So then the second case we see is like those that had like some part of the schedule were below 50K, like you were thinking, and some were above. So what they have done is like they go flat for those that were below, and then they keep paying for experience at some point. And they have to guarantee a 2,000 increase. So everybody got a 2,000 increase there. And then and that's for 36% of districts. And then the other ones are urban Arkansas districts. So what are those? Little Rocks, Northwest Arkansas, Fayetteville, Bentonville, Springdale, Rogers. Those are the urban areas that we have. Those were paying already very close or above 50K. They have kept their schedule as it was. They are paying for experience that they were, and they just move everybody by 2,000.
So my understanding the way that about your answers to Brendan's questions about how the increase in salaries of all three of these types were paid for. If I'm understanding right, all of these increases
State.
were fully paid by the state. So none of these divisions, and these are all of the divisions in the
Yeah.
state, they didn't react to this LEARNS Act by saying, okay, we get the message, teachers should pay more. We've got some extra local dollars. Well, we're only doing this because the state's making us or enabling us.
Yeah, not yet. In this first year, we don't see anybody has gone out to move from their traditional schedules except for flat, because it's like we have to satisfy. And then nobody's paying above. It's all this minimum, which was very interesting to see.
Well, I guess if they're thinking it may disappear, why
Yes.
put yourself on the line
Yes.
for saying we can't pay
So,
that was this
so
much.
my conversations with so we are just getting IRB approval to do a survey with superintendents and principals to understand what is in their head this year, as we see that they start discussing this in school boards. We have two choices: listen to all the school boards or like us. So we are hopeful that we will be in the field in the next weeks to at least see the second year. What I heard from my conversations that are informal conversations with a couple of school districts, these are more urban, and they were like worried that this has to be renewed every year, like the funding. And they are worried. They say we don't, they did the minimum, they were worried. I think especially the first year, like I said, like this was trying to be repealed until the last minute. So I don't think they consider like making big changes. Now, the question is, as this stays longer, will they adapt differently? Only one school district, Fayetteville, has come up in conversations in the school board, and I did listen to that one. And they are basically keeping the same schedule, and they are increasing 3.5% salary for everybody. Just up. They are not discussing any other changes.
Just a clarification, on the 2K, is it like you had to make at least a 2K increase to that step and lane, not
Yes.
to individuals? Like,
To that extent.
okay,
To all the salary schedules that you put. Yeah, people could make more from other sources. Yeah. Okay, so I will show you how this looks like. When we look at, and we created this is, I'm proud of these ones, are super cool. I mean, we could go, we had a blog post where we have made this interactive because we want to give this information to teachers, school districts, and then you can see how your district compares before and after and where you are. So this is for Northwest Arkansas, and what we have is the whole salary schedules, how they pay for, this is for bachelor degree teachers and different years of experience. And here we have, these districts are the urban districts that had a significant advantage of pay. So this is Fayetteville, Rogers, Springdale. The Springdale is actually the red, which is close to Fayetteville. So that's where we live, that's where we are, the university is, Walmart headquarters, that kind of context. Here are the rural districts around that were way below on pay. So what happens with LEARNS? For new teachers, the salaries have kind of equalized more. Now, as teachers gain experience and some of these districts are flat or semi-flat, they lose competitiveness as teachers have higher levels of experience. The same happens in the area of Little Rock. Actually, like this green one is Little Rock, have clear advantage versus other districts around. Now we see for low levels of experience is more competitive, but they continue to pay more experience, so they keep a big advantage here. And then you have your rural districts that were way below, and now they are all paying the same for all years of experience. Flat. Okay. So those are like the patterns that we saw and you see visually in the data. Okay, so just to show you like geographically how this has affected teacher salaries. So we have these maps for BA teachers with different years of experience. We see pre-learns, again, the central Arkansas area and the northwest Arkansas area are the ones that were paying higher salaries. That advantage just grew with years of experience. We see Arkansas Learns new teachers, almost no difference. So the reform has made it so if you are a new teacher, it doesn't matter where you teach in Arkansas, you are making almost the same. This is not, in my analysis later, I will show you adjusting for cost of living. So just think like also in these small towns, making 50K is a lot. But what we see is that because of these flat schedules, as teachers gain experience and these other bigger districts are paying for years of experience, we see that that advantage comes back. As you look here, it becomes a bit more dark in the central and in the northwest Arkansas again. Okay, so how does have affected the relationship between teacher salaries and district characteristics? So first, I want to show you in terms of allocation of money, where this money went to in terms of district characteristics. So we look at the difference in salaries, pre-learns and post-learns, and then we relate that just a linear regression model with teacher characteristics. So we see on average and for different levels of experience, and this is teachers with a BA. So we see on average for beginning teachers, paying learns cost about, for an average of $9,600 more of investment. So we see bigger, and that goes with 15 years of experience, it's almost 5,000. So this has been an influx of funds for more for new teachers, more for rural districts. So we see that rural districts are compared with the urban, Fayetteville, Little Rock type of district. We say that they receive for beginning teachers about 1,000 more. So it's more beginning and rural teachers. And actually suburbans are getting less. Suburban districts are getting less funds. And districts with higher levels of poverty are getting more. So this means that a 10 percentage point increase in childhood poverty in the district is associated with like $345 more in funding. So let's see how, yeah.
So I'm probably missing something really simple. How did the suburban districts, if this is just the difference between 2023 and 2024 in the prior school year, I thought no one was hurt by this. So how is it that the suburban districts have a loss there?
I mean, they don't lose, but they get less than, you have the constant, so they get, so it's not like they are receiving 1,000.
Yeah. I was missing something.
I think so. That's how I think it. Like on average is 9,000. If you are suburban, you get 8,000, right? If you are rural, you get more. Yeah, so that's how I think it.
Yep.
So let's see. So this has changed really the relationship. Again, we use linear regression models. This has changed the relationship between teacher salaries and district characteristics quite a bit, especially for beginning teachers. So when you look at beginning teachers, pre-reform, if you were a teacher in a rural district, you expect on average to earn $1,224 less than an urban teacher. And we see that after learns, that relationship gets reduced to just $230. If you, and especially for, I think the one that was like really shocking to see, like for districts serving higher proportion of children in poverty, we have like, again, like a 10 percentage point increase in childhood poverty associated with earning about $352 less. Arkansas Learns has killed that. Like for beginning teachers, now it doesn't matter if you are teaching in a district with higher poverty or not. But because of the patterns that we are seeing, once teachers gain experience, these relationships reappear. For rural districts, we see that now there's still a penalty for being in a rural district of after lunch of 1,600. So it's less than it was because it was 2,600. So it has reduced in size, but that's still there. And we see the relationship come back for districts with poverty. We see that for more senior teachers, we see that that relationship is still there. Okay, so just visually, I think that was an interesting result that I would like to highlight, how this relationship between teacher salaries and increased childhood poverty has changed with Arkansas Learns. So again, if you were beginning teacher, like $350 less. If you were in a school, in a district that has 10 percentage points higher, when you look at 5 years of experience, you see it has reduced a lot, but it starts reappearing. And by 15 years of experience, it's smaller in size, but it's still present. So I think this in the future will have interesting or like important implications in terms of if we think like teacher experience is one of the predictors we have for teacher quality. So this can affect the distribution of experienced teachers across the states. So I think it's something that we need to study moving forward, because definitely if you are an experienced teacher, it still remains more advantage for you to be in one of these urban districts that is going to pay you for experience.
In your conversations with the different school districts and superintendents, are they aware, like, are they projecting or predicting out what, you know, this
So
basically an experience?
Yeah, so I think my conversations have been limited, like I said, like the survey, we want to learn more representative, because my conversations are around the context of nowhere, Arkansas. So where there is urban districts, they feel competition. So they know that, so what I'm seeing like in Fayetteville now is increasing salaries by the same percent to all, which means you are increasing more for senior. So they are even increasing the advantage.
Yeah.
They want to retain those teachers there. They feel competition in the lower level, like the conversations, they say, yeah, teachers that now were coming to in Fayetteville, now they are going to this rural district to start. We see a lot of, I mean, in their conversations, we will see like in my data, I don't see much going on yet in terms of those moments. Yeah.
Sorry, but is it like rural still driving distance to
Yes.
Fayetteville
Yes.
or like rural,
So
like the Delta?
Teachers that before they will drive for 40 minutes to go to Fayetteville and teach because you made so much more, and now they are like, I'm not like, we want to also play, so we have so much information. We don't know where teachers live.
Yeah.
And like, can we play with, I think there is going to be some movement in the local, like goes to your work of like the local, like how this has affected maybe in a local spillover kind of thing. So yes, so I think that's where what the superintendents are expressing. My data is looking overall. We don't see much going on. I would show you in a second.
Do districts, in terms of the salary schedule, just count total years of experience like anywhere? Are there districts that?
No, in the district.
In the district?
Yeah. I think it's in the district. That's a good question. I should check that.
I mean, obviously that's gonna affect the.
That's
for how teachers.
yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I will go back and say, I'm not sure.
Vary by district.
It might vary by districts, how they are counting. Because that might retain people in, right?
Mhm.
Thanks. I don't know for sure.
No, you go first. Sure. In your conversations, districts, have they been able to advertise like these salary increases? 'Cause I know, like, with the uncertainty around the policy, I'm wondering, like, would they have had any time to like put that in like promotional materials or?
I don't think so. And that's a question. That's why we wanted to make, like, I don't think people knew what everybody else were doing. Like, that's why we try to put this data together and put in a blog post, and like they could see, and we send it to a list of people that receive the blog post from the Office of Education Policy. Because I don't even know teachers know how you can make now. I think they know kind of, but like individual districts, how they are being. So I think, and that's also something that we thought about, like whether we will do an experiment where we send this information only to see if that goes, but I'm like, no, we just put it out to everybody.
Do you have a sense of like non-salary benefits and how they may differ still?
Yeah, so that's something that right now I don't think it differs that much, but it's something that some districts are thinking about. Like, so as you will see when you move there, it's a growing area, and housing is becoming less affordable. So some districts are considering, but they didn't move through, but they had an initiative in Springdale to build houses for teachers so they are trying to think, what else can we give to teachers if
It's
we
like
don't give them?
A statewide retirement fund, or
Yes, there is a statewide retirement fund.
do you have any measures of like other like job, workplace amenities?
Yeah, so we have like school characteristics and yeah.
If the salaries are
Yeah.
equal, then maybe. you
So I
support
would say the rural, like the childhood poverty, the type, so the composition of the kid, the body of the students didn't seem to matter much. So it was more in the childhood poverty or rural. But yeah, those are good questions. So let's see, so then we want to see this change anything this first year after all these changes. So, okay, here honestly, I'm a person that likes to do fancy methods, but here I only have 1 year post, and I'm open to any different ways to think about this. So I'm like, right now it's an interrupted time series, but it's only 1 year post. So, and then we have the issue that this is happening during the pandemic. So who is my comparison year that I should use here? I don't know. So I'm using all freelance years that I have, like from 2016, 17 as my comparison. I'm using only pandemic years. And I'm also only using 1 year pre, 1 year post. But I don't think we can fix it very well. And then what I do is I run this as a multinomial logic model where I allow for the 5 transitions that I define. So either you stay in your school, you move inside the district, you move outside, you switch to those non-instructional roles, or you leave the profession. And controlling for some teacher characteristics, districts, urbanicity, and region fixed effects. And then because teachers experience different changes in their salary, depending on their education and years of experience and where they are, then I use like a dosage effect, which I believe is a bit more exogenous. So I think the post-learn, so in a pre-post, the post-learn is going to have pandemic recovery mixed in, but if I can see different reaction from you getting a 2,000 increase versus a 10,000 increase, I think that's where I don't know, I'm thinking that's where more of the estimate might be from the reform. Any thoughts are welcome of how to think this. Then something that came up in AFP, and I did have time to do is they asked me to adjust salary for cost of living. So we use the American Community Survey Comparable Wage Index to adjust it. This is an index that is developed by NCS and looks at college graduates outside teaching and how it compares. I think, I don't know, I need to research more on this, but I'm worried about those rural areas that don't have many college graduates, how accurate this is. But it's the best, I mean, it was the easiest thing that I had available to try to do that. So then in this graph, what you have is for the teachers in my sample, so for whom I have salary schedules all in public schools, we see the salary changes in thousands of dollars without the adjustment. And here we adjusted for cost of living. So we see on average, we see without that adjustment, a majority of teachers got the 2,000, and then the distribution is spread with like 99 percentile is about 13,000 increase on salary. The average was 6,000 with cost of living. We see it spreads a bit more here. Some are slightly adjusting for cost of living. I think this is the Fayettevilles and those areas is less than 2,000. But then the top of the distribution moves all the way to 18,000. So there is more spread once you adjust for cost of living. My results are the same with adjustment or without adjustment. They didn't change that much. So this is what I find. These are all ratios. So let's look for different transitions. First, we look at exits and we see post-learns, and these are the different comparison groups, all years, pandemic years, only 2 years. So post-learns, we see a reduction in exits. So that I think is like a recovery from the pandemic probably, or maybe slums, we don't know, but it's a mix of those. So you are about 20% less likely to move out of the teaching profession in that first year of implementation of LEARS. However, the dosage effect with just salary increases is above 1, which tells me that those teachers that had higher salary increases, they are still more likely to exit. The effect is about 4%. But that tells me if we think like, who are those teachers per $1,000 increase? Who are those teachers that got the higher salary increases? And even though I control for region and I control for urbanicity, they can be unobservables of those districts that were paying very low. And it's telling me that LEARS is not helping, or how I interpret this is that LEARS is not helping compensate for the working conditions on those places.
So the other controls are just the regional
Yes.
dummies and teacher characteristics.
And urbanicity.
So why not control
And-
for the other district characteristics?
Yes,
Have
and I-
Poverty.
Yes, I think I have all those. Let me double check, but I'm pretty sure we put all those in. But then I forgot to put them in the. Yeah, I think we have them there. I think we have poverty, everything that I have been showing you. Like we have percentage-wide poverty, district, urbanicity. I'm pretty sure it's there. I will double check. I think in the slide I forgot, but I'm pretty sure in the model it's there. But yeah, we should control for everything. I was controlling for everything. I even tried to control, so we control for region. I also tried to control for smaller areas, just to compare within the area. Like we have these district cooperatives where they coordinate together. So I was controlling for that. The problem with that is that the multinomial gets unstable with so many dummies. So I went to region. It didn't matter when I could have effects. But yeah, I should check the controls that are all there. I'm pretty sure they are.
So is post-learns and adjusted salary change, are these both in the same model, same time?
Yeah, so this is an interaction of post-learns with your salary.
Oh,
change.
okay.
So it's like a dosage. So the post-learn, you have an effect, and then per 1,000, yeah, you change whether you have an effect.
Okay, sorry, now I need to like.
Yeah, sorry, I went too fast here. So you have the post-learn salary change interaction.
Okay, can you go back to that? So the post-learns here is for those who had no change in salary. That's the main effect here.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's.
Would this say that like people who had higher salary changes, the effect on exiting was actually smaller?
Yes. Per 1,000, it gets smaller. Yes. Which made me think like who are having these big changes, and these are these more rural, higher poverty districts, that even though you control for that, I don't know. I mean, I was surprised too, but I like, LEARS is not help in that essence. It doesn't seem so.
Are you controlling for teachers' years of experience?
Yes.
Because I'm just wondering, like, because the new teachers are getting these big bonuses and
Yes.
they're also.
So this is teachers' demographics, teacher experience. Okay, so where I do find some interesting results is in these switches out of the instructional roles, still staying in the district, but in non-instructional roles. So we see post-learns, these are still like twice more likely to still happen. But here we do see that if you're a teacher that experience a higher salary change, then you are, the effect is smaller. So you are less likely to move to these non-instructional roles. I think this is interesting because we see in other work where we are studying this, that these are especially mid to late career teachers that are switching a lot, and they tend to be higher quality teachers. So it seems that maybe some action is on retaining these teachers in the classroom versus going. We know when they go to non-instructional roles, they get a big salary increase. That's the way that they can make more. So it makes sense to me that maybe the first action is on, okay, I was thinking to leave for being a principal, for being in the district. Now I will stay here. Yeah.
But like, there aren't the same number of those opportunities across districts. Like, there wouldn't be as many of those opportunities to switch.
Yeah, that's a good, I think they have come up more available with ESSER funds, which is what we are trying to study. Like where the ESSER funds that were allocated, how many different districts. So I think it's an open question. I think they have expanded during COVID. Now, the ESSER funds are finishing too. So it's an open question, like to see what will happen. But I agree that probably urban districts, they created more of these positions.
I have trouble interpreting the switcher to the coefficient. So the post-learn coefficient tells me that there was a jump in the number of people who did switch.
Yes. Which is a trend that we see from the pandemic.
Okay.
So that in the last year, still independently of who you compare with, they were about twice more likely to switch than in previous years.
The policy doesn't affect teachers who, or people, staff who were not in the classroom,
But this is teachers that were in the classroom and they move to a non-instructional role.
Okay.
So they are treated because they get higher salary. And the reasoning is people move to get higher salary.
Okay.
Now, when you are getting a higher salary in the district, you are, the pandemic is making so these opportunities are more. So, but it reduces that effect.
But how do I understand the adjusted the negative coefficient?
So per $1,000, this reduces the probability of you switching, which the baseline is like, it's like by 7%.
Okay.
But it's changes your relative odds of switching versus staying.
Stay, yes.
So have you, so when my team runs these models, these things confuse the crap out of me.
Yeah, no, me too.
And so we always predict the margins there, but let's hold all of these things constant and let's just see in percentage,
Yes.
how did the probability of exiting stay, switcher changing?
Yeah, so I do have those because I just got a new computer. Like that. Yeah, but I didn't have time to put them in a table. But I'm with you. I imagine on the pets I like more. The problem is like this is a big data with, and I had an old computer.
We have a virtual machine, that's the same problem.
Yeah, I just got it last week actually, and the first thing I did was to run that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think in the next, it's confusing, right? Like to interpret this.
Well, especially because as I think Brendan, you pointed out that the post learns
Yeah.
is the effect of this whole shebang.
Yeah.
For somebody who had no salary, increase, but everybody
Yeah.
got a $2,000.
Yeah. So maybe I should do like some combination. I'm saying like, look, if you got 2,000, so that will be double. So it's like 4%. So that will be 8% reduction.
You could just recenter the salary variable, just
Yeah.
center it at 2,000.
Yeah, let's do that.
The category is people who got a $2,000 raise, which was the minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess what I was worried about is if these coefficients are being driven by some weird outlier,
Well, so we have these guys. I mean, after the, like a lot get, like here before the adjustment, you do have like these 2000s here. But it's, I don't know, like after you adjust, you do gain like, so I will not worry about, it's like pretty, like the distribution is pretty here. Just to have some districts that, or some teachers that got those amounts of money.
I think you could, might be interesting, I don't know how much power you have, is to like bucket out the salary increase, because you do have enough variation there, or it might
Yeah.
be, like, there could be non-linearities
Yeah,
that might be interesting to.
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good one.
That was easier to
Yeah.
interpret too, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you thought about like doing some kind of synthetic Arkansas so that you could try to
Yeah,
get at the?
I don't have the data of other states like Missouri or Texas, Oklahoma. But
Try to isolate the
Yeah.
learns from the.
Missouri, they're really open to records requests, like from anybody. I don't know
yeah,
that it's fast, but records requests are usually successful in getting Missouri.
okay.
Probably not a short-term solution. but-
And is Arkansas salaries, on average, they're lower than surrounding states, or they're lower than Texas?
They were lower than Texas and now they are getting comparable.
Okay, so now they're higher
They're in
than,
the country on paying teachers most. We wanted to be first, but
Do you have a sense of when these switches are happening? I'm thinking like, if,
so we look at it in the beginning of the year. So you were a teacher and then in the fall, we see you as, these switches happen in the summer, most of them. Like teachers finish the school year and apply for this.
well, I guess in the sense of like, you mentioned how like there's a lot of uncertainty with the timing of this law passage. Were some of these teachers already planning on switching, like they saw a job
Yeah.
posted for instruction in February and then posted for university? They saw
Yeah.
it was March or something.
So actually, we just need more people, send people because we have scraped the web of job postings for a while now. And I have not had time to look at what is in there, but we could look at when these positions are being announced once we get into the job postings data. So yeah, we have a lot of data, which is great. But that's a good question, like when, so we need to start looking at that for other projects too. So I would look when the switches postings happen most of them. I don't know right now. But we collect the stuff thinking we will need it, so.
I'm remembering part of your motivation slides earlier in the presentation where you showed the number of teachers in Arkansas by certification or licensure through traditional methods versus alternative methods. I'm wondering if you've started any subgroup analyses, thinking particularly about your consider results. I think, like John, I am interested in the mechanism there. And so I'm just curious if you have the data to see if, I don't know.
Alternative,
Yeah,
really more.
yeah, if there are any differences, I don't know that there would be, but.
Yeah, we have not done it for this project to put like traditionally or alternative or out of state. We also get out of state. We have, so my other student, Taylor Wilson, is looking at the early pipeline, and we have some survey data on how teachers feel about how prepared they are. And then we are also looking at the trajectories of those teachers in the labor market. So in general, we do see, depends on the type of program, but some alternative, actually the state run program, they feel less prepared in that one, and they are more likely, it depends on the route, because we also have another project where we are looking at grow your own from the paraprofessional to teacher pipeline. So it depends on how you come into teaching. I think that you are retained, maybe not so much. I don't know, both are combined probably, effects.
Yeah,
But I have not thought about it on this context. So I need to think about it because we do have that information.
I think I'm just noticing, I mean, as you talked about your results are indicating that these teachers who received the larger wage increases are rural teachers and new teachers.
Yeah,
And so my thought process was then, are these new teachers just getting in over their heads into the teaching field in general? And you
Yeah.
can't.
So let me show you, because I also do this, this could be interesting. I also do this by different levels of experience of the teacher to see. And I think, so what you find is that most of the action on the switchers is in these late career teachers that already were higher, more likely to switch to these roles, and is the ones that are being retained. And for early career teachers, we see that, it seems post-learns, they were more likely to move out of district, and maybe learns is making them stay in the district that they are. So maybe, I don't know, that's interesting to think about, how with more alternative coming in these new teachers, how that is affecting those patterns. And I just have one more, which is also, I don't find much, but we also look at about those who live, whether there is any movement of those who live out of district, whether they are more likely to move to the shortage areas that we have in the state. We don't find anything going on yet. And we look at shortage areas with this out of license proportion. So this is what I have. So to conclude, and then we can see if there are more questions, but so before learns, starting teacher salaries in almost all districts in Arkansas were really low, below this new minimum. This has been a big change. Starting teacher salaries, I think the positive is now they are more equally distributed. There is minimal variation across districts. And the LEARNs also provide substantial more funding for rural and high poverty districts. So we see this significant relationship between poverty in the district and negative and salaries that for beginning teachers, LEARNs has killed that. Now, more differentiation in pay across districts appears as teachers gain experience. And if you are an experienced teacher, it is still an advantage to be in these more urban districts that continue to offer higher salaries. If other districts in urban areas do like Fayetteville, they are just going to increase that. Maybe they realize that's our advantage and they are just going to increase that. Now, like I said, because experience is a predictor of teacher quality, this worries me about how equitable the distribution of quality teachers is in the state. Now, when we look at retention, the effects, not much. Some effects maybe for switchers, but not big effects yet. Potentially, this is due to the uncertainty and the craziness that when this passed, like that people make decisions, they didn't know what was going to happen. It's possible too that the current changes have a delay effect. So that's something that Hendricks also find in Texas. So in Texas, it's even more extreme because he says that the salary schedules like Arkansas are approved around June, he said, but teachers already have offers or decisions, like you say, looking at the timing of the job openings in February. So they have already made up their mind. So maybe we can look at the job opening times also to see, and maybe we'll see an effect coming now in the second year that is bigger. We will study also, I want to see, but that's more a longer term, like how is affecting the influx of people into teaching. And like I said, I'm hearing like, oh, Missouri is worried that now more teachers are staying in Arkansas or like coming into Arkansas. So Texas, whether we lose less. So that, I think that's something that we'll see in the years to come and not expect much immediately. Also, it's possible that school districts, it seems that they came up with the minimum that we have to do. They have a lot of uncertainty. It's possible that now they start rethinking. So that's when we have our survey that hopefully help us. We plan to go this summer and collect again all salary schedules to see what happened. But it's also possible that, the LEARNS Act has equalized salaries, but working conditions are not equal in these places. So it's possible that you need other type of initiatives like grow your own, or like you need, more bonus pay to go into these places. The merit pay includes value added, but also has a merit pay for being in areas of shortage. So we'll see if that has any effect moving forward. So thank you so much. A lot going on in Arkansas and hopefully something to learn. Thank you.